We have a pretty interesting story today. My wife suffered from total amnesia, and now it's affecting our marriage. This story was posted a long time ago, December 29th, 2009. Clarification, this happened a little over a year ago. The doctors say my wife had viral encephalitis, and that is what caused the memory loss. It was very sudden. My wife was fine when she woke up, came to help me find some clothes for our daughter, and then started asking me repeatedly what day it was. The first doctor we saw sent us home, saying that she was having confusion from her migraines, which she does have a history of, but never had any problems with memory loss or confusion. About a day later, my wife woke up from a nap and asked me if I was her boyfriend. I lost it at this point and took her to our family doctor and then straight to the ER. She was hospitalized for almost a week. In the hospital, she only remembered about 30 to 90 seconds before she would completely forget what she had been told. By the time she was discharged, she was up to about 15 to 30 minutes short term, and she was starting to remember some of the details of her hospital room layout. What was behind the door, the closet, or toilet. It's been a long, slow process to recovery over the past year, and her immune system really took a hit. Her short-term memory seems to be completely fine now. A lot of her long-term memory is back as far as we can tell. It's hard to judge. The older memories seem the most intact, like childhood, grade school, high school, and college years. The stuff from the last few years have been the slowest to come back. She remembers our oldest child's birth, but remembers nothing of our daughter's birth or her pregnancy. That has been difficult. Wow. There is so much more to this story, but I am already pretty stunned. We have the first update, and it came 1 year and 4 months later, which brings us to April 29th, 2011. Since the AMA in December of 2009, the relationship between my wife and children was the first to deteriorate. She didn't remember having them or making the decision to have them. Told me on multiple occasions she feels like she's babysitting someone else's kids and didn't want to be a mother any longer. Our 9-year-old son had some problems with some kids at school, and we didn't find out until he started acting out at home. Between that and getting caught sneaking cookies up to his room, my wife reacted by really clamping down. She felt his getting picked was a sign of weakness and that he needed more discipline. We disagreed, but tried to keep moving forward. Our son was very confused as one of the kids was a good friend, and he would get upset, confused, and contradict himself when trying to explain what happened, which infuriated my wife. She felt like he was lying and just doing everything for attention. Anytime he made a mistake, she would nail him hard. I came home from work one day to find him crying and hauling all of his toys from his room to the basement. He had done something that pissed her off. I don't recall in particular what it was that day. He would get yelled at for bringing home a dirty lunch bag or coat. At this point, if he even looked at her the wrong way, she would yell at him. Anytime I objected, we would end up arguing, and she would blame me for contributing to his attitude and behavior. Our son was now lying anytime he sensed that he might be in trouble, and he's been very good at it. I advocated discipline, but I also wanted to get to the core problem behind the lying, which I felt was his fear of getting in trouble, yelled at, and punished. My wife took the lying as a personal insult and wanted to punish accordingly. Our son is very bright, socially awkward, and probably a bit immature for his age. He didn't respond well to the beratement, often doing what he probably felt was his only recourse, stonewalling. Against my objections, she threatened him with punishment, no food, or sleeping in the basement if he refused to answer her. This escalated into name-calling, seething sarcasm, and belittling him in every way. I tried to protect him as much as possible, but anytime I stepped in, she would then make me pay for it. If I tried to calm her down while she was yelling at him, it would upset her further and turn her anger towards me. If I tried to talk to her privately about the kids while they were in bed, it turned into an argument. I was incredibly confused. My wife had never, ever treated anyone this way before. She was full of anger and regret over quitting her job to raise the kids, as well as the lack of jobs which kept her stuck at home. She felt with her illness and the fact that she gave up so much for the kids that they should work extra hard at behaving. She complained more and more how unfair her life was and how she didn't deserve these kinds of health problems and unappreciative, bratty children. I've always tried to advocate what I've read about parenting: understanding, patience, communication, and respect. Don't be permissive or a friend, and let children do whatever they want. But don't be too heavy-handed with discipline. Discipline with an emphasis on cause and effect and settling realistic boundaries should be the goal, not punishment that is retaliatory, only severe, and without love. Man, I'm not a parent, and I always take my hat off to all you parents out there, because parenting is hard enough, and then you add this layer, a severe health issue, and now it's causing a lot of other effects, just my guess, and it's affecting the relationships within the household. I can only imagine what an added layer all of this is to already difficult parenting. Affection and attention from their mother for both of our children dropped significantly, especially our son. It is pretty much zero. I began to notice how the kids would actively avoid her and come only to me for things they needed. They began speaking more quietly in an attempt to go unnoticed by her, but all this did was anger her further. She blamed me for being the weak parent that they would gravitate to. She said she wouldn't change, as it would just show them that weakness would then get catered to. Again, we would disagree and argue about the issue, again with me taking all of the blame. The whole situation worsened still. Our arguments got more heated. The name-calling done by my wife got worse. I was beginning to see how manipulative my wife was getting. She would guilt our son with how his horrible behavior kept her sick. She would attack him instead of his behavior and force him to admit how awful he was. During an argument about this, my wife struck me in the face as I was trying to sit down in a chair. This is not good. I wasn't making any move towards her, and I've never come close to touching her in anger, so I was beyond stunned. She didn't apologize, ever, just justified it by saying I was upset and she was trying to snap me out of it. I wanted to leave, but I didn't want to give up on my marriage. I kept telling myself she is sick and dealing with a lot of stress. I justified it any way that I could. As if reading my mind, she told me I was too gutless to leave and that I would never get the kids if I did. She told me that I was the one with the issues and that I was responsible for her anger and sickness. Whenever I put my foot down, she would guilt me with blame for ruining her life. I did carry a lot of guilt over her illness and regretted trusting one of the neurologists and not getting her to the ER sooner. She knew what buttons to push or what guilt would drive me to tears. I was always tired and my will to fight was diminishing. Because of how horrible the kids were, I took on more and more responsibility. I prepared their breakfasts and lunches the night before and made dinner when I got home. I helped our son with his and our laundry that she would no longer do. I got all the groceries and ran all the errands. She told our son that since he was such an a-hole that he no longer gets anything from her in any way. Told him to plan on starving if I wasn't around. I feel like this is getting a little unsafe. A little toxic environment, some severe emotional abuse going on. This feels unhealthy for these children and you and your relationship. She would vacuum the house on occasion, but that was about it. All other times were with her on the couch, watching TV, playing on her cell phone, and shopping and browsing the internet. I was at the point that I felt like I was raising them as a single father, except for her yelling. We began going through stretches where we wouldn't speak, and I actually began enjoying things as the kids and I got to spend time reading, playing, and while my wife just locked herself in her room. That would end when my wife and I reconciled, but the periods between arguments and related periods of non-communication decreased while their length increased. This whole time, I've never given up hope that I'd be able to help her through this and understand how counterproductive her treatment of the kids actually was and how unhealthy her constant anger was. All I got was blame, blame, and more blame. And if I would get upset with her accusations, she would accuse me of being unstable and overly sensitive. If I reacted to her calling me curse words, an embarrassment of a husband, a worthless father, or whatever else she would come up with, then I was being an a-hole who didn't care about his sick wife. She called our 9-year-old son a worthless piece of shite, a horrible son. She called him lazy, selfish, etc. Told him he was such a horrible kid, it was no wonder he didn't have any friends. Awful. I stepped in, but I always paid for it. I would give him a hug and kiss him before bed, still in tears, and tell him that while he needed to always work on his behavior, that I would always love him and that nothing would change that. Fortunately, I had to do that far less with our 5-year-old daughter, but she wasn't immune to that kind of treatment. Both kids were becoming more and more withdrawn, but my wife insisted that it was all my fault. Everything came to a head today. My wife had not spoken to myself or the kids in a week, except for the occasional snide remark. I had been sleeping on the couch and trying to spend as much time as I could with the kids. I got a call from her at work Thursday morning, and she immediately told me my son was going to get his butt when he got home. I asked what he did, and she told me he was running down the sidewalk with some kids instead of waiting at the bus stop like he was told to. I asked what else he did, and she immediately snapped that she had told him previously not to move from the bus stop and that he needs to learn to do what he's told. She went on to say how she is not going to be legally responsible for an a-hole that won't listen to her. I told her that I couldn't talk any longer as I had a meeting that I was going to be late to and that I would call her later. She was furious and texted me a few minutes later, telling me what a worthless father I was and to not call back. Later in the day, I went to a dentist appointment, and after leaving, I got another text message asking why I didn't respond. I texted back asking what was going on and was told my loss. Being close to home, I decided to postpone running some errands, and I went straight home to find an empty house. My wife had taken my daughter out for some errand, but my son was due home any second. She didn't come back for another 45 minutes, and major rainstorms had been hitting the last few days. He would have been stuck outside if I had not decided to head home early. She quickly came in and started yelling at him, and I told her I already handled it, but she immediately started yelling at me about my lack of parenting. I told her if she was going to yell, that I wasn't going to stand there and take it. I told her we could talk later, but she just started yelling and calling me names right in front of our son. I put my hands up in a way of surrender, backed up, turned, and I started to walk away. Then I heard her going to put her hands on our son. I immediately yelled and told her to stop and to get her hands away from him. She responded by charging past me to the phone and said she was going to call my mom and tell her how messed up in the head I was and how I was contributing to his behavior by refusing to discipline him. Then she said she was going to call the police. Stunned, I told her that was insane. At that point, I realized I could hear our son crying hysterically in the other room. Confused, I told my wife as much and said that I was going to check on him and that she needed to put the phone down, and if anyone was calling the police, it was me. As I turned to check on our son, I heard a massive crash. My wife had taken my brand new 27-inch iMac and slammed it down and completely smashed the glass and display. While she went upstairs, I stood dumbfounded at what had just happened. I then ran into the other room to check on my son. I got him to calm down and I went to find my wife. She had locked herself in our bedroom and was talking to my mom, lying about how she was afraid for her and the kids, and I had chased her in there and forced her to lock me out. At that point, it hit me that our marriage was over and that I needed to consider the kids. She ignored my request to open the door and continued to try to provoke me by lying about what had just happened. I collected myself and I went back downstairs and checked on my son. He seemed a bit shaken, so I talked with him for a while and I just told him I would never leave him and that hitting and yelling and name calling were not going to happen. My wife came down with her cell and told me if I had calmed down enough that I could speak with my mother. I was absolutely stunned that she was so obviously posturing and painting a picture of a frail, sick wife hounded by her angry husband. My wife had never shown any type of behavior like this before. She used to be someone that I considered to be the most honest person I know. I explained to my mom what really happened, and over the next hour, I finally told her what had been happening over the last year or so. We live a 6-hour drive away from my parents, but they suspected something was up. We hadn't been home to see them in quite a while. My wife has no relationship with her parents or family. At this point, it was late, and I wasn't sure if I should call the police over her getting in my son's face and the destruction of the computer. I was, and still am, in such a fog, I can't really think clearly. I don't know what to do at the moment, but I made it clear to my mom that either way, the marriage is over. She recommended calling a lawyer this morning before I do anything. After finally telling my mom what had been happening, I realized how bad things really were. Honestly, sometimes when you say things out loud and repeat a situation to someone else, you're like, perspective. It like hits you in the face and you're like, saying it out loud just makes such a difference sometimes. It's important to talk about things. I'm trying to not be overwhelmed by the guilt of not having done something sooner or doing more to protect my kids, but I'm also worried as my wife has changed her mind and said she's not moving out until I get a psych evaluation. My biggest concern is that she's going to try to frame me as the angry psycho, that it's not likely, as both kids openly admit that they're scared of mom, but I have this nagging doubt and I have heard too many horror stories about husbands losing their kids. My son also told me he heard us arguing the night my wife put her hands on me and described the whole thing in detail. He said he got out of bed and put his ear to the HVAC vent and heard it and was stunned. So I know I'm not the perfect father or husband, but I try really hard to improve every day and try not to quit on anything or anyone. I just can't believe that I'm sitting here typing this, knowing that I'll soon be an almost middle-aged single father with hopefully 2 kids on his own. I sincerely believed I would never be someone who got a divorce. I believed that divorces happen to other people that didn't try hard enough. I hope my wife realizes she needs help, but I can't let her hurt us or our kids anymore. I would greatly appreciate any advice you can offer on how to cope, what I might do to help my kids cope, and anything related to the coming divorce and what I can do to make sure I protect myself, the kids, and get full custody. Oh my gosh. This is a nightmare in so many ways for everyone involved and also the marriage, because before she got sick, it's almost like you're now married to a completely different person and you can't do anything about it. A different mom, a different wife, a different partner. You probably don't even recognize her in a lot of ways. And that would just be so strange and difficult to deal with. The story does not stop there though. He then added pre-post edit on what happened this morning. My wife was going to take the kids and leave due to my issues and already called my family doctor and told them I was acting crazy and scaring her and the kids, which was not the case in any way, shape, or form. Told her I would call the police if she tried to leave with them. She's also been sending emails and texts to my parents and a coworker of mine about how I am bipolar and schizo and a big mess. To show I have nothing to hide, I agreed to go in and talk to my doctor and be evaluated this morning. I took both kids with me. I was concerned my wife would take off with them. My son cried that he was missing school as he didn't want to stay home with her. He then said he wanted to stay away from me because mom told him that I was sick. I explained to him that I was fine, just upset over what happened yesterday and a bit tired. He was still bothered about my lost work and broken computer. He couldn't believe how mad she was to do something like that. I talked to the nurse. They had put the kids in the other room and then talked to the doctor. She thinks I'm borderline depressed with everything I'm dealing with, but is very concerned about the family overall. She discouraged me from escalating legally and involving the police for fear of making things worse, but I told her that my biggest concern was for the kids' well-being. I mentioned that when my wife started having seizures over a year ago, things got a lot worse. I wasn't sure if it was the stress or the anti-seizure meds, as my my wife had never, ever acted like this before. I'm not sure what to do. My doctor wants my wife to come in and get checked out, but I told her the biggest issue is that my wife refuses to admit any kind of wrongdoing. She insists the problem is me and the kids stressing her out. I contacted my boss and then HR. I'm taking some FLMA time off to regroup. The woman in HR gave me her personal cell number and the name of several psychologists and SWs that she thought could help. My wife came down to talk to me after we got home, and she seemed surprised that I wasn't kept in a psych hold. I told her what the doctor told me about being borderline depressed and wanting to see her, which she ignored before starting to accuse me of being the problem again. I don't see how we can stay married at this point. She thinks there's nothing wrong with her behavior. I'm going to start by making some phone calls and lawyering up. Last point. My wife has completely changed her personality as of this morning. She gave our son a big hug, the first affection I've seen in almost 2 years. And when the kids and I were sitting at the table drawing, he showed her his drawing and she commented how wonderful it was as per normal. He is very confused as to why his mom is being nice all of a sudden. The next update came 5 days later. We are now at May 4th, 2011. It has been a complete roller coaster the last few days. I wasn't going to fight for custody then. She was. Found out this morning that when she met with our family doctor on Monday that she was given an ultimatum. Go to family therapy or doctor was calling CPS. I have asked 4 times and I've been denied 4 times, always with ridiculous excuses. Left a message for the doctor about where we're at. She now has a lawyer and is meeting next week, but I have 2 consultations in the next 2 days. And the first thing I want to know is how to get her out. She has done some extremely hurtful things to our kids the last couple of days. She does not care about them in the slightest. And we have more updates. But first, I need a sip of water, and so do you. This is your daily reminder. I don't care what you drink, but you do need some water. Okay, cheers. Ever see my hair in braids like this? It's because my hair is absolutely disgusting. Just so you know. It's like needed a hair wash day 3 days ago, probably have an oil treatment in my hair to hold the braids together because I just keep pushing off washing my hair. Yeah, it's just, my hair's dirty. You can tell, it's just dirty. It is. I'll wash it tonight. Leave me alone. The next update was 28 days later, June 1st. She was really starting to make me nervous, kept talking about how irrational and psycho I was acting and getting more and more angry. After we had a disagreement over something minor, she threatened to call the cops, like the officer told her to if I got irrational again. I went outside and I called my lawyer, who I hadn't met yet, and I told her what was going on before she jumped in and told me to get the F out now. Don't pass go. Don't wait for anything. Just go. She told me to get the kids and to stop by the local PD and tell them my lawyer advised me to get out and let them know what I was doing and that it was on the advice of my attorney. I went to the PD with the intent on just letting them know what I was doing, but they wanted to chat. Turns out the officer I was speaking with had been at my house that morning. He seemed suspicious, and while we talked, the kids colored in the other room. Turns out they talked to my son, but we had told the exact same version of events. The officer let me talk with his supervisor, and when he came back, his demeanor had changed. He told me my wife told him a similar version of events, but without the violence towards my son. Essentially, she said we argued, I lunged at her, and that I chased her up the stairs, and that is why she smashed the computer. He was pretty sympathetic at that point and just asked that we let the PD know where we would be staying in case she called and said the children were taken. I ended up staying at a friend's house. They had 2 spare rooms and we had our own bathroom. She is a bit older than me and married with no kids, so she has a pretty nice place. The first few nights, the kids wouldn't sleep unless I was in the room or lying between them. I fell asleep with them the first night and woke up with both of them clinging to me. The next morning, I met with my attorney and we immediately went down to the courthouse and I filed a protection order. against their mom on behalf of the kids. It went surprisingly quick. The magistrate heard from me before talking to my son. My attorney said it usually takes a bit longer to convince the judge a PO is in order. A full hearing was set for next week, but until then, my wife could have zero contact with the kids. That weekend, I met with a local cop to drive by the house and pick up some clothes for me and the kids to find about 8 garbage bags full of our stuff in the corner of the garage. She had thrown out a ton of our things, clothes, toys, books, medicine, you name it, and some of it was clearly mixed with garbage. I took the whole pile and threw it in my vehicle as well as anything else that I could grab. The next week, we filed a abuse and neglect complaint against my wife. Thursday morning, we met before the final PO hearing and decided to delay that until next week and come up with some sort of temporary custody agreement. My attorney hadn't met my wife before and was shocked at just how unstable she was. Her speech was disjointed and my attorney could tell her thought processes were all over the place. She was up and down emotionally and practically had a panic attack when we first met. That quickly turned into sobbing and then intense anger. We eventually came to a verbal agreement, but not only until both attorneys told my wife she was completely unreasonable and the magistrate could force an agreement down her throat if need be. The agreement was to get the kids back in the house and have my parents come down to stay with them until the hearing, but come next for the initial abuse and neglect hearing, my wife said she's not leaving the house under any circumstances. So she stays in the house and I get full temporary custody of the kids. Even the court advocates for the kids and can't believe that she chose the house over fighting for visitation. My lawyer is really happy and it's a big win for me, but I'm running out of leave for work and now I have to find alternate housing and daycare. Before this past Memorial Day weekend, I got an email demanding visits with both kids over the weekend. The agreement was that they would be supervised, short, and the court advocate would be involved for monitoring as well. My wife goes ballistic when I push back and says that I'm violating a court order, etc. I explain that none of the required people have met the kids, let alone talk to any of us about scheduling visits. On top of that, both kids, especially my son, have been vocal about not wanting to see her. My son is extremely angry with her, as am I. The more we've been away from her, the more the three of us have realized how bad things were, and there's nothing I won't do to protect them and make sure nothing like this ever happens again. I call my lawyer and explain what's happening, and she shuts down all the talks of visits. My wife has been estranged from her family for the last 15 years. Her mother kicked her out of the house after an argument, and she has had zero contact with them until I left with the kids. Now they are fully reconciled, and she thought it'd be a great idea to introduce the kids to grandparents they have never met in the same visit with a mother that has abused and neglected them. It is insane that she still hasn't had a mental evaluation, and the kids and I have been in therapy the last 3 weeks. FYI, I got a clean bill of mental health from the psych doctor, and he is not even recommending medication to me. I think I'm doing well considering everything we're going through. Kids are doing pretty well, very happy and acting like kids again, but things come up that let me know we have plenty to deal with. So the next thing we have is a pre-trial in another 2 months unless my wife negotiates some plea and custody deal that I find acceptable. Next update, 3 months later, August 22nd, 2011. I have the kids and they're safe, but I'm at a friend sleeping on the floor with little clothes. The bank account is wiped out, legal bills are mounting. I found a new place to live after a few months because the judge wouldn't let us back into the house. So I don't know who this woman is, but she is hellbent on destroying me in every way possible. I'm actually doing pretty well with all of it, and the kids are doing much better. I understand stuff happens, and while I'm doing everything I can to protect myself and the kids, there's too much room in the system to mess with someone if you want to, and she is. This entire thing is a nightmare. We have a mini update 1 week later, September 2nd. So I have been living in a friend's spare bedroom with my 2 kids for the last 4 months, but next week we finally move into a 2-bedroom apartment. And our final update, it came 1 month later, October 1st, 2011. And all he wrote was, stuff has gotten worse, but should begin quieting down for a while. The trial isn't for a bit yet. And I looked, his profile is still active on Reddit, but he never posts again. Has not commented, nothing. We never hear from him again. I have a headache just thinking about that. I just hope everyone gets the help they need, including your ex-wife, soon to be ex-wife, whatever. Clearly, there's a lot of issues there. I really hope she gets the help she needs. I hope you do. I hope the children do. I hope everyone is safe, healthy, and happy in the end of all of this. I'm very curious how it ended, but you did get primary custody. You get a new apartment. You have a new home and a safe environment for them. And that is a win in itself. Let me know your thoughts on this, you guys. This one wasn't like a juicy, fun one. This was a very serious one. Let me know. I'll see you in the comments. Stay classy out there. Stay sassy. Bye.